Hello. Today I'm going to tell you about my IELTS experience. To be specific, my IELTS speaking experience. I took IELTS last year. I got 8.5 overall. I got 8 in speaking. Here it goes. So I was there in front of the speaking test room with my proof of ID in my hand, and I had the candidate number. When my number came at the examiner, this British gentleman, he came out of the room and he called me in. And he asked me to sit down. I had a sit, and he asked for my passport, my proof of ID. So I gave him the passport, and he had a look at my name and my picture, and he matched it up with something that he had, some information. So then we got started. At this point, at some point, he started this audio recorder that he had. He started recording this whole conversation. So he asked me my full name. Then he asked a few things about myself. He asked me, I think, what I did, if I was a student or if I was working. At that point, I was doing my professional accountancy qualification, so I told him that. Then he asked me why I wanted to do IELTS. I told him the reason. Then we moved on to some extended discussion. Initially, we were talking about, I don't quite exactly remember what it was, but more or less, it was he was asking me about the, what was it? Was the about the yeah, he was asking me about games. He asked me that do children play more games? Do people or children general something like that? He asked me, do people play more games these days? This and that. So I told him that, well, yes, depends on what games you mean. So you see this, I mean, I could just go with, yeah, people play games or they don't. But it's good to show that you can think, you can, drive the conversation. So I said it depends on what kind of games you mean. If you mean physical sports, then I'd say people or children, for that matter, play less physical sport. If you are talking about games as in like computer games and stuff like that, the virtual ones, then the children actually play less. And then he asked me, he has this list of questions, probably a structure or something. He was looking at it and he was asking me. So then he moved on to the next question. He asked me, is it good to play games? So I said that, as I said, the if it's physical sports, then it is good. The virtual ones can be good at some point. It could help you to develop your brain because, as the same way, the physical sport helps to build your muscles. The other one, the virtual games, can, I mean, certain types of games can help you to, build your mind, to enhance your mind. But a lot of games which are like, war, this and that, and also for fighting and stuff. So I told him that some of them can have detrimental effect on the children. So that was it. Then we moved on to if he asked me something about if parents are giving time to children these days, so something along those lines. And we talked about families getting smaller. So what happens is at this stage, some of these discussions go on. He has these questions. Some of them he asks himself based on my answer, but he has this list of questions, so he goes on with that. And so we talked about these family issues. I told him that families are getting smaller, children are being raised by, they're sometimes they're growing up on their own as far as guidance and stuff are concerned. They're learning from their friends, their, this from whoever they play with, whoever they grow up with. So there are these lots of single parents who can't really give time to their children, things like that. So we talked about those things. And then, so at this stage, we were already into something like, I don't know, 6, 7 minutes. And then at this point, he gave me this piece of paper, which had a topic on it. And then we he gave me about 1 minute, I think. Yeah, he gave me about 1 minute to think about it, and my topic was an adventurous person that I had seen. And what is usually on that piece of paper is a topic and some follow-up questions. Like mine was describe an adventurous person that you know, or something like that, or you have seen. And then there was some follow-up questions like where you have met that person. Now, who is this person? Where you have met that person? How do you know him? What him or her? Uh, what kind of adventurous activities does he or she do? These kind of follow-up questions. So basically, what it you're supposed to do is you're supposed to sort of include these things in whatever you say. So you could write down some things. He gave me a pencil and a piece of blank paper. I could write something on it, make some notes, but I prefer not to. I just thought about what I was going to say, and I didn't make any notes. So after about a minute, he asked me, "Okay, you can begin." So one thing I had already decided, that no matter how long it gets, if he doesn't stop me, I'm gonna keep talking about whatever the topic was. So that's what I did, and I started off with I talked about a work colleague of mine who was working with me at that point of time. To be honest, I don't really like that person. She turned out to be very selfish and stuff. But somehow that's what came to my mind. You never know. I mean, at that situation, that's what came to my mind. So I said, I told her name. I said that I met her at work. So you see, some of these questions might sound similar, like who is this person? How do you know him or her? How did you meet? Things like that. So I could just say she's a work colleague, and that supposedly in a way that answers the question that how we met and stuff like that. But obviously it's good to extend on things like that. You can sort of go into details. So I said that she's a work colleague. The first time I met was this and that. When I went to work, I saw this new girl, this and that. So things like this. So then I said the adventurous activities, this and that. So I talked about that from London to Brighton, there was this uh, bicycle ride. There was a long bicycle ride. She went along with rollerblades on. So I thought that was adventurous. Then I said, obviously, she goes places where I don't go, but I see her pictures on Facebook that she posted. She posts rather. You see, when you say these small mistakes happen, instead of saying post, I said posted. So these things happened in the test as well. And when you're nervous, that happens more. But anyway, so I talked about that she goes mountaineering, she does this and that, all sorts of stuff. She does her own gardening. So I kept talking about these things. And obviously, when the examiner thinks that you are doing well, the examiner wants to see that if you can continue with this. So he was sitting there and letting me talk. So I don't know how long I talked about, maybe 2 minutes or more, but it seemed a long time to me. So when I was running out of ideas, I brought in other things. I even made up a few things, to be honest with you. Now, if you can make things up, and to be honest, the examiner doesn't really care about it because as long as I mean you're doing what you're supposed to do, that is, your English is being tested, not if you are truthful or not. I mean, your conscience is not being tested here. So what I did is I made a few things up and went along with it. And the examiner eventually said, okay, you can stop. And then he asked me some questions about the topic we talked, not particularly about this person. What happens is that, I mean, if you're asked something, not about the incident you said, not the ones that you mentioned, but like general, like, is adventure good in a person's life? Things like this. And do people this was the first few things he asked, like, is adventure good? I said something like, it depends on what kind of adventure, and obviously it's up to some extent it's good that you can refresh your mind and take some time off work and everything, your everyday life, and then you can get back to it later on with a new zeal. You can sort of re-energize yourself. So I talked about things like that, and I said, if you just overdo it, and it can have some detrimental effects in your life as well. So then he asked me some projected questions, as in like, he asked me, what do you think will be in the future? Like, would people be more adventurous or less in the future? So I think it was to see if I could, formulate some ideas, things like that. The previous one was like some opinions, as is it good or bad, this kind of things. The next part was projecting something, thinking about what could happen in future, things like this. And that was more like it. That's all I can think of. And by this time, I think overall it was about 14 or 15 minutes, something like that, roughly. So then he asked me, then he told me that it was over. I stepped out, and later, 13 days later, and when the results came out, I saw that I got 8.5 overall, and I got 8 in speaking. But to be honest with you, I think, I mean, in the test, I was nervous. I made these little mistakes. The example that I told you a little while earlier, that you can make. I mean, it's not that you don't know English, but even if you're speaking in your own language, even if you are talking in whatever language you speak in, you're used to, you're pretty much used to it. But when you're nervous, you might make mistakes. Instead of, these little tense, this and this, these small things can be a little tricky. So I know I did make mistakes like this, and as I was in the speaking test, I was in the test, I could feel that any little these small mistakes I made, I knew that I was making these mistakes. But I know I couldn't really help it. It happens. So I think if I was very relaxed, and the way I'm talking to you now, I'm sitting down and doing my own video. So I think in these kind of circumstances, the way I'm talking now, I would have got 8.5 at least in speaking, but I got a little less. I got 8. So the more you can relax, the more you can take it as like you're talking to somebody, as in like easily, as an everyday conversation. Take it as an everyday conversation. That not as in like really every day, but to relax, as in like you're talking to a friend. The friend is asking you something, you're replying to it. If it could be like that, then maybe these unforced errors would happen less. So that's more like it. I hope this whole experience helps you. You could take something out of it. You could benefit from it maybe. So that's that. So see you later. Take care. Bye bye.